My friend Veronica is a gifted and prolific writer. When she started working on her first romance novel, she shared with me some of the tricks of the trade that she learned from fellow romance writers. One of the tropes, or literary devices, made us giggle. Secret baby. Secret baby was fun to say. It had a certain ring to it. Secret baby was a common theme in romance novels because an unexpected pregnancy had a way of bringing people together, allowing them to recognize their humanity and giving them an opportunity for growth. The more I thought about it, the more I knew that secret baby was a theme in romance novels because it was a theme in human history. I was a secret baby. A few weeks after I graduated from Brown in 1990, I drove across the country. There was no job waiting for me, but I had a place to stay in San Francisco for the summer. As a graduation gift, my mother had bought me a used Acura Integra. Moving 2,600 miles away was a funny way of saying thank you, but I don't think anyone was surprised. To say that my mother and I had a complicated relationship or that I came from a dysfunctional family would be an understatement. She was known to call me a whore on occasion and to throw my things out the window onto the lawn in a sudden rage. Her family had a history of sexual abuse, violence, and addiction that spanned multiple generations. I was adopted, like my older brother, but we'd only talked about adoption once when we were doing family trees in elementary school. Like many things in our family, it was a taboo topic. I was moving to San Francisco to start life on my own terms. The night before I left, I checked the attic for any last items I might want to bring with me: black and white photography paper, cookbooks, journals. I wasn't sure when I'd be back. In an ordinary-looking box, I came across my birth certificate for the first time. The name next to Mother was vigorously blacked out with magic marker. What wasn't entirely blacked out was the name of the hospital where I was born, St. Elizabeth's. It was just a few miles away, next to the magazine where I'd had my internship the summer before. What also wasn't completely blacked out was age of Mother, 21. The hospital and her age made her real, three-dimensional. I was 21 on the day that I was staring at this piece of paper. I put the birth certificate back where I found it, closed the box, and came down from the attic. I set out for the West Coast in the morning without saying a word about it. Summer turned to fall and then to winter. I had a job waitressing in the marina, and I was taking a photography class at City College. One day, I came across a Dear Abby column in the San Francisco Chronicle, the print version, of course. I don't remember the exact details, but I think it was a letter from a birth mother trying to reunite with a child she had given up. What I do remember was discovering the International Soundex Reunion Registry, a nonprofit that connected children given up for adoption with their birth parents. They didn't go looking for people who didn't want to be found, but if two parties contacted them with the same information, they would make a match. I registered with the information I had, and then I waited. About a year or two later, I was working for a gift catalog as a customer support rep. We sold things like personalized dog bone ornaments and ice cream scoops that meant moo. One day, a coworker transferred a call. "Are you sitting down, Diana?" the woman asked. I was. "You're going to want to get a piece of paper," she said. "I'm calling from the International Soundex Reunion Registry. We found your birth mother. Her name is Anne Morrison McCambridge. She lives in West Roxbury, Massachusetts." It felt like time stopped. "This doesn't happen very often," she said. "We're excited for you." She gave me my birth mother's phone number and said she was expecting to hear from me that evening. I hung up the phone. Everything was about to change. That night, my birth mother and I talked for hours. A few months later, we met in person. It turned out that her house was only a 10-minute drive from where I grew up. Anne was an art teacher, married with a 17-year-old son. We drank tea, looked at photos, peered at one another for resemblances. She was smaller than me, more fragile, but I was the spitting image of one of her sisters, Mary Ellen. We talked about how much we both loved black and white photography and cooking and Paris, where I'd studied for a semester. I walked around her house, admiring the different colors she used to paint all of her walls. She told me a little bit about her pregnancy, how Catholic Charities had sent her to live in a convent with some nuns in Canada, and then how she had come back to Boston and worked cleaning houses before giving birth. It sounded lonely. I knew my birth father was married and had kids. She wouldn't tell me anything else. His name, where he lived, how long they were together, how many times they had unprotected sex. Just kidding, I didn't ask her that. And I didn't ask why she didn't keep me. Anne and I stayed in touch pretty regularly by writing letters. Sometimes we would share black and white photos, mostly trees and landscapes. In one of these letters, she finally told me his name, Patrick Joseph Maloney. He had been a student at Harvard when she was at Boston University. She also admitted in the letter that she never told him she was pregnant. I tried not to judge. It was 1968. People were doing crazy things. Going to Canada without saying goodbye to your boyfriend wasn't that big a deal, all things considered. Well, yes and no. Soon after, she mailed me an 8mm film reel from a filmmaking class she took at BU. I borrowed a projector and watched it on my living room wall. It was in black and white and kind of grainy. There was no sound. He smoked a cigarette and made funny faces. She waved shyly at the camera. Just a couple of college students. I watched it over and over, at least 20 or 30 times. I was thrilled that they looked sort of like hippies, my own parents being Republicans and members of the oldest country club in the United States. My birth parents looked cool, like college students who might have loved each other, who might have even stayed together if things had turned out differently. One day, Anne wrote to say she finally met Patrick for lunch to tell him about me. She said he got angry and stormed out of the restaurant. He didn't even want to know my name. I did my best to get on with my life. I finally had a job I liked, managing a commercial photography studio. I was thinking of applying to grad school. A few months later, I got a letter from my birth father saying he was coming to San Francisco. He had changed his mind about meeting me. He gave me an exact date and time when he was planning to show up and take me out to dinner. I tried not to freak out. When the day and time arrived and he was 20 minutes late, I poured myself a glass of wine. When he was 40 minutes late, I poured myself another glass. When the doorbell finally rang, I opened the door. There he was, standing on my welcome mat in a blue blazer, holding out a stuffed bear wearing a t-shirt with a lobster on it, the kind of bear they'd sell at an airport gift shop. I took the bear. I gave this man, Patrick, an awkward hug. It might take many years to begin to see how one secret baby could help us recognize our shared humanity and maybe give us all an opportunity for growth. But there would be plenty of time for all that. First, we'd start with dinner.